The fall of Hardhome. Again. Death came once, but now it returned with fury, and from the sky, something else followed. The wind howled over the frozen cliffs of Hardhome. Snow fell sideways, and the sea roared like it was mourning something. But it wasn't just weather. Something was wrong with the world. The dead had returned. Again. In the distance, shadows moved unnaturally across the snow. Blue eyes, glowing like frozen fire, lit the forests beyond the walls. The free folk, what little remained of them, gathered around crackling fires that gave no comfort. The first fall of Hardhome had left scars, but this time they knew no one was coming to save them. Not Jon Snow, not Daenerys, no dragons, except Ice Cube the Night King rises again. Far beyond the wall, deep in the haunted forest, beneath an ancient weirwood, Bran Stark's eyes snapped open. He had gone too far in time. He had meddled again, pushed the limits of the three-eyed raven's power, searching for answers in the past. And in doing so, he broke the cycle. A timeline fractured, a curse reversed. The Night King, once dust, rose again from the silence of forgotten ice. Not reborn, rewritten. Faster, smarter, more powerful. His magic now fused with echoes of time, and a hunger not just for dominion, but revenge. Milky Way, a tear in the sky. It started as a streak of red in the sky, like a comet cutting through winter's heart. Tormund squinted from the tower above the campfire lines. What the bloody hell is that? Jon Snow stepped out beside him, narrowed eyes watching the sky burn. Then, boom, a shockwave rippled across the cliffs. Trees split, ice shattered, snow burst upward like a volcanic spray. Something had crashed into the woods beyond the weirwood circle. Weapons drawn, Jon and Tormund led a small group of free folk toward the crater. The snow around it steamed. Charred bark, cracked stone, a ring of scorched ground. And in the center, a man, barefoot, glowing, breathing heavy, wearing a red cape torn by the wind. Jon stepped forward cautiously, Longclaw ready. "Who are you?" The man looked up. His eyes shimmered, not with blue fire, but golden heat. "I'm Kal-El." He paused, eyes scanning. "This isn't Earth." Zombies surrounded by death. Before Jon could ask anything more, the ground beneath them rumbled. Tormund muttered, "I know that sound." The trees behind him twisted, then cracked. From the north came the howl of an undead giant. And then figures. Dozens. No, hundreds. White walkers. Whites. Frost-covered beasts. Claws. Blades of ice. Eyes of death. Jon's voice rang out. "Form a circle." But it was too late. They were surrounded. Kal-El stood, confused, until a white lunged at him. It clawed at his chest. He didn't move. Then, his eyes flared red. The man of steel meets the king of night. In a world ruled by ice and death, the sun fell from the sky, and now the Night King feels the warmth. The fire in the crater still glowed as night took hold. Around it, Jon Snow and Tormund stood in disbelief as the stranger, this Kal-El, moved without armor, without fear, and without explanation. He had heat in his eyes. He didn't freeze. And when a white had lunged, his mere gaze turned it to ash. "He's no man." One free folk elder muttered. "No wildling either," said Tormund. Jon was silent. Kal-El's voice cut through the tension. "You're from Westeros?" he asked slowly, confused. Jon nodded. "And you're not?" Superman looked to the stars above, familiar, yet wrong. "I came from another world. I was pulled through something, magic maybe." He paused. "There's no sun here. I'm weaker, but not helpless." Jon frowned. "You talk like a maester, but fight like a god." Ice Cube the Night King feels the flame. Far to the north, on the shattered edge of the ruined wall, the Night King stood, hands behind his back, staring into the burning winds. He had seen the flash, felt the breach in the world. He had felt it not in his mind, but in his bones, the strange pulse of something alive and unbreakable. He turned to his white walkers, a low growl in his throat. One of them stepped forward and touched a shard of obsidian pulsing with cold magic. And in that moment they saw it. A world not of ice and snow, but red suns, flying men, and a dying planet. Krypton. They saw the child hurtling through space, cradled in a pod of light. They saw fire, hope, power, and now he was here. Fire, the burning wall of ice. As Kal-El walked toward the edge of the frozen ridge, he saw what remained of the Great Wall, cracked, twisted, melted in places by dragon fire and years of decay. But now fire burst from its seams, not dragon fire but corrupted flame. The Night King had returned to it, reforging it with death magic. A wall of burning ice, where heat killed and cold burned. Suddenly, the flame parted, and there he stood, the Night King himself. Face emotionless, eyes like ancient ice. Behind him, an army of shadows. Kal-El floated gently off the ground, hovering above Jon and the others. Jon, you're not strong enough. Kal-El, then I'll hold the line until I am. Snowflake touched by ice. As Kal-El flew toward the Night King, the flames twisted. A White Walker hurled a spear of ice. Kal caught it midair, but one got close. Too close. Its icy hand brushed Kal's shoulder, and the world stopped. For a moment, just one, Kal-El saw into the White Walker's mind, and the White Walker saw into him. Krypton, the fall, the sun, Zod, the fortress of solitude, Martha, Jonathan, and then, something shattered, the spell rebounded. Kal-El screamed. A burst of energy exploded outward, knocking everyone back. The Night King blinked for the first time in centuries. He had seen something he did not understand, and he hated it. Visions of fire and ice. Two histories, one ending, and somewhere in between, fire that does not belong. The wind whispered through the roots of the weirwood tree at Winterfell, as Bran Stark sat motionless in his chair, eyes pale, mind drifting beyond time. The ravens circled. The godswood pulsed with ancient magic. Then he saw it. Mantelpiece locked, two timelines, one collision. The vision came like a split blade. On one side, dragons soaring above King's Landing, fire consuming thrones, Dany weeping in ash. On the other, a red-caped figure descending through a sunless sky, shattering undead legions, with a scream of heat and grief. Bran's voice echoed inside the vision. Two timelines, two protectors, one choice. In one, magic reigned. In the other, hope fell from the stars. Suddenly, the two worlds began to twist together like vines, and at the center stood the Night King, unmoved, unaffected. He doesn't belong to time, Bran whispered aloud, snapping back into his body. Son, the weakening of Kal-El. Meanwhile, far north in the haunted snowfields, Kal-El stood shirtless and bruised, breath fogging in the air. His body trembled, not from pain, but from loss. The sun was not here. Not truly. Whatever small reservoir of power remained in his Kryptonian cells was fading. I can feel it slipping, he said quietly, kneeling into the snow. Jon Snow, watching beside him, said nothing. What could he say to a god who was breaking? But then, a warm wind swept in, and with it came a woman in red. Fire, the Red Priestess, appears. Kinvara, High Priestess of R'hllor, stepped barefoot across the snow like it was ash. Her eyes glowed like molten coals, and her voice sang with prophecy. The fire that fell from the stars, you are he. Superman looked up. You know me. She nodded. Your light is not from our sun, but fire is fire, and fire answers to the Lord. She lifted her hands, chanting in High Valyrian. A ring of flame circled Kal-El, revitalizing his cells in a flash of searing heat, not from the sun, but from divine fire. His fists clenched, his eyes burned, his breath steadied. Not full strength, but enough to fight. Hammer and wrench, the Kryptonian forge. Kinvara turned to Jon. He was not the first. Long ago, a shard of his world fell through a rift, buried deep beneath the Isle of Faces. The children of the forest hid it. Jon frowned. What kind of shard? Kal-El's face changed. A forge. Kryptonian steel. A weapon. A symbol. A chance to turn the tide. Dragon, the Night King's ancient summon. But deep beyond the wall, the Night King stood before an altar of ice older than the wall itself. His army of whites stood frozen in prayer-like silence. He raised his hand, and plunged his blade into the altar. The ground cracked. Something ancient stirred beneath the ice. Not man, not beast, not even White Walker. Something older than the first men, older than the children, older than death. A shriek tore through the tundra. Jon, Superman, and even Bran felt it in their bones. The real war had just begun. The battle beneath the weirwood sky. Beneath ancient branches, the last of fire and blood stood shoulder to shoulder, against ice, shadow, and time itself. The winds above Hardhome howled louder than ever before, but not from cold. From fate. The sky had turned violet, laced with cracks of magic and time, swirling above the battlefield like a storm waiting to collapse. Below, the last living souls stood at the edge of the cliffside camp. Jon Snow, black cloak flapping in the wind, stared forward with grim eyes. Daenerys Targaryen, hair braided for war, stood beside him, her fingers crackling with dragon fire. She had no dragon left to wield. Arya Stark, silent and watching, her face unreadable, a blade in her hand, no fear in her eyes. And then, Superman descended. Fire, the fire-armored man of steel. He wore new armor, not of this world. Forged in the Isle of Faces, its silver plates were laced with obsidian veins, pulsing faint red from within. At the center of his chest glowed a fire rune, etched by the Red Priests, bound to Lawloress magic. "The fire remembers you now," Kinvara had said. "You are the last warmth in the land of cold." Kal-El hovered just above the ground, his eyes locked on the northern ridge. The army of the dead was already there, thousands of whites, their cries echoing across the valley. And above them something worse. Dragon the Night King on a shadow dragon. The Night King rode through the clouds, seated on the back of a colossal frost dragon, not made of bone or flesh, but pure magical ice, shaped like a storm. Its wings cracked the air, and each beat brought snowfall in reverse, pulling warmth out of the sky. As the beast roared, its breath froze the sea mid-wave. Daenerys staggered back in shock. Jon gripped his sword tighter. Superman floated upward. "He's mine." But before he could launch, Cyclone, the rift opens, and a stranger steps through. Crack! A sudden burst of light split the air behind them, a tear in the sky, shimmering gold and silver. From it stepped a man in black armor, with white hair tied back, and a scarred face that had seen too much. A pair of twin swords rested on his back. Geralt of Rivia. No one spoke. He looked around, sniffed the cold air, and muttered, "Wrong world, but just in time." Jon narrowed his eyes. "Who are you?" Geralt shrugged. "Someone who's seen what happens when timelines break. You're about to find out." He turned to Superman. "Kal-El, you don't belong here, but neither does that thing." He pointed at the Night King's dragon. "This war, it's tearing reality. One more wrong move, and the multiverse collapses." Superman clenched his jaw. "Then let's end it fast." The horns of the north sounded. The dead marched, and above the weirwood sky, fire and frost prepared to collide. Last breath of the north. When gods and kings fall together, history becomes legend, and legend becomes memory. The sky was on fire, or so it seemed to those watching from the cliffs of Hardhome. Above them, Superman and the Night King clashed mid-air, one glowing like a living sun, the other like a shard of winter itself. Their blows shattered sound, cracked ice, and tore clouds in half. Each time Superman struck, the air burned. Each time the Night King countered, magic lashed across the sky, like black lightning. Below, Geralt, Arya, Daenerys, and Jon Snow cleared paths through the dead, holding the line as chaos erupted across every corner of the battlefield. But all eyes turned upward, because this wasn't just a battle. It was the end of a story written long ago. Comet, a sky battle beyond realms. Superman shot forward, slamming the Night King through a mountain peak, splintering rock and ice. But as he hovered to press the attack, the Night King raised one hand and summoned the breath of the void. A wave of frozen silence hit Kal-El. Not cold, not pain, just absence. Absence of light, of warmth, of memory. Superman's armor cracked, his fire dimmed, and in that silence, the Night King whispered a curse. One not in words, but in time. Kal-El began to fall. Fire the choice. Miles away, Bran Stark sat beneath the heart tree, eyes white with visions, tethered to every thread of magic holding Westeros together. And Jon Snow, bleeding, limping, stood over him. Geralt's words echoed. The loop begins and ends with the three-eyed raven. Kill the source. Save the fabric. Jon looked up. Kal-El was falling. If Bran lived, the Night King could return forever. The rift would never close. Superman would die in a world that was never his. If Bran died, perhaps the magic would break. Bran spoke softly, eyes still glowing. Do it. I am only memory. Jon wept, then drove Longclaw into the snow beside him. No, he whispered. There must be another way. He turned to the sky. Drop of blood, the final sacrifice. Superman opened his eyes mid-fall. He could feel it, the last of his strength, the last ember of his power. He heard voices. Lois, Martha, Jor-El, and Bran. You were never meant to stay, Kal-El, but you were always meant to save. He soared upward one last time, his cape ablaze, his fists molten with magic granted by R'hllor and the Red Priestess. He met the Night King head-on. No words, just fire and frost. In a final burst of light, he tackled the Night King into the rift Bran had tried to keep closed for years. A scream echoed across realms, part ice, part god, and then silence. Dove ending. The rift vanished. The dead collapsed. Snow began to fall, quiet, peaceful. Hardhome stood still. Jon walked to the edge of the cliff, where Kal-El had last risen. He looked to the sky, and whispered. The North remembered the day a star fell to save them.